This is supersonic Wi-Fi from Xfinity. It's fast.
So gaming with your niece has never felt more intense. Hey, what does this button do?
Unbeatable internet, only from Xfinity.
Hello, everyone. How is it going? Welcome into week one. We have finally made it. Welcome to Inquirer Live at GameDay Central, presented by Xfinity. Today, we are coming to you from Ford Field, where the Eagles will the Eagles will finally begin the regular season against the Detroit Lions. I am Eagles beat reporter for the Philadelphia Inquirer, Josh Tolentino, and as always, I am joined by my fellow beat reporter and co-host of GameDay Central, EJ Smith. EJ, Happy New Year. Happy week one, my man.
Happy New Year, Josh. It's good to finally be back. Last time we were here, GameDay Central was like in its infant state. It was one of our first shows. It's really crazy to think, a year later, how far we've come. And, we just want to thank you guys for, sticking with us and, just following along as we do this each week.
EJ, Happy New Year, my man. It is here, the 2022 regular season. I want to remind all our viewers, no matter what platform they are watching on, we are going to be coming to you live before every single game, at home, and on the road, both throughout the regular season. We were there during the preseason, and obviously if the Eagles make it in the postseason, we've got you on everything you need to know about these Eagles. EJ, what is the best place that they can find us?
That's right, Josh. Inquirer.com/Eagles Game Day is where you can find us. It's where we want to hear from you. You guys can comment throughout the game. We're going to be in there giving you our instant analysis, and we want yours back. Some of those comments, we'll use them for a segment we'll do later on. It's my favorite segment. It's called What You Said. But yeah, make sure to go in there after the game or during the game after the show, and we'll be able to continue the conversation there.
All right, EJ, let's finally get into it. Week one is here. It feels like just yesterday we were in Tampa doing a GameDay Central show down there. The Eagles lost to the Buccaneers in the NFC wildcard game. Over the past months, the team has done a really commendable job. General Manager Howie Roseman and a ton of offseason additions surrounding quarterback Jalen Hurts. And not just that, on the defensive side of the ball with coordinator Jonathan Gannon. EJ, expectations are high. This is Philadelphia. It's only Nick Sirianni's second year, but obviously they want to reach the playoffs. They want to compete for the division. EJ, take me back through this week. Center Jason Kelce had a message that he really broadcasted during his press conference on addressing these expectations. What did Jason say, EJ?
Yeah, well, I can't repeat it word for word because, we're a family newspaper, a family company. But the gist of it was expectations are freaking nothing. We can't – basically his message to the team is don't read the press clippings. Don't read E.J. Smith and Josh Tolentino and Jeff McClain on the Philadelphia Inquirer. And, we all predicted them to have double-digit wins. We all thought they'd make the playoffs. They're not going to do that by reading those clippings. They're going to do it, as he said, by working hard, they acknowledging that they haven't won anything yet. It was a speech to the media. But even Jason Kelce, listen, he's been in this town for a long time. He's a smart guy. He knows that that's going to circulate. I think by the end of the week, the entire team had seen that video clip. And again, he even said at the press conference, he's like, yeah, there might be a video about this coming out. I know how it goes. So, yeah, I definitely think that this Eagles team wants to manage those expectations.
EJ, let's address some of those expectations because, as we mentioned earlier in the show, General Manager Howie Roseman, a lot of offseason additions. I think some guys, the highlight, wide receiver A.J. Brown, edge rusher / linebacker Hassan Reddick, cornerback James Bradbury, and, of course, new defensive back Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I also don't want to forget linebacker Kaiser White. I just walked through a bunch of them, EJ. Let's highlight maybe one or two of those additions and how you expect them to affect the team. EJ, let's talk some A.J. Brown. What are your expectations for A.J., not just for himself, but what he'll do specifically in the passing offense for Jalen Hurts, other targets like Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert.
Yeah, I mean, he's big time. Like they traded a first-round draft pick for him. They paid him $100 million, and I don't think it would be hyperbole to say that he's lived up to those expectations during training camp. Obviously, now we're in the regular season. We're going to see it for real. But, I mean, my expectation based off what we saw in the summer and based off AJ's track record in Tennessee, he's the type of guy that can prop up an offense. And when you have a quarterback like Jalen Hurts, who didn't really target the middle of the field with a lot of frequency last season, that's a step he's going to have to take, this year to develop as a passer. A.J. Brown is the perfect player for that. I mean, the way that he can win on in-breaking routes, slant routes, dig routes, even posts, the way that he can win in the middle of the field and the havoc he can wreak on a defense because he is so hard to bring down. Once he catches the ball, he's like a running back. He's the type of guy I think he can prop up this Eagles offense at times. Last year, there were times where I felt like the offense, was sputtering or, really struggling to get something going. A.J. Brown is like instant offense. It's like that shooting guard that you can just get you a bucket whenever. Like he's that type of receiver. I think that, he's definitely going to add a different dynamic to what they already had, going into this season.
Loving the basketball analogy, EJ. As you mentioned, A.J. Brown, a my ball type of receiver. Having him and Devontae Smith on your outside is options. I mean, that's as good a formidable duo. Our colleague, columnist Mike Sealski wrote, could this be the best duo in Eagles history? Definitely in recent history with Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown. Obviously, the Eagles, I mean, they have a tough offensive line. They should be reliant on the running game and obviously Jalen Hurts' explosive play ability. But in the passing game, you can't ask for much more from what A.J. Brown will bring to the team. EJ, one guy to highlight on defense. Let's circle him right now. Defensive back Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. He likes to go by CJ. CJ, what are your expectations for him? The team only added him about a week and a half ago. I still think he's the explosive type player that I think he sees a lot of snaps today in week one.
Yeah, I mean, like the Eagles coaching staff was slow playing it with him. Oh, maybe he'll play, maybe he won't. I think it's gamesmanship. I mean, they got this guy. I'm sure they're excited to have him. He's the type of guy I think will eventually, be in a do-it-all safety role. You'll see him around the line of scrimmage. You'll see him in the post. You'll see him, manned up against tight ends and running backs. He's going to do a lot of stuff for them. Maybe we don't see all of it this week. He is getting acclimated to the defense. But, I talked to him this week. I talked to Marcus Epps. I talked to some of the other defensive backs. They all seem confident. They said he's got a high football IQ. He comes from a New Orleans Saints defense that, has some of the same principles and is always a good defense. And, they seem pretty confident that he's going to step in here and, just fit right away. So, I saw some people making jokes like Jonathan Gannon's defense is pretty easy to learn. They don't run that much stuff. Some of that is true, but I mean, I still think that you could see him deployed in some different ways even this week.
All right, there you go. EJ has the expertise on CJ Gardner-Johnson, the new Eagles defensive back. EJ, let's get into the injury report, and it was a pretty clean slate for these Eagles. Everyone on the active roster did not have a game designation this past Friday heading into today's game. EJ, that's pretty significant news, and obviously the team lost Andre Dillard to IR about a week and a half ago, but everyone on the active roster is healthy. What is the significance of that? Is that a byproduct perhaps of the lightened or softer schedule that the team experienced throughout training camp?
Well, I mean, it certainly doesn't hurt, right? I mean, we'll see how the season goes, but the way that they ran training camp, it helped them out because you look at it right now, they've got 52 guys on the active roster, and like you said, they've got 52 healthy players. I guess they have 54 with the practice squad call-up. So, and I mean, it's definitely worth mentioning. The Lions do have some injuries. So I just put up there an actives list because it comes out right as the show comes on. Tommy Kramer's going to be out. Frank Ragnow was hurt during the week, but he's not listed as inactive. And Halapulavati Vaitai, I still know that name. I'm proud of myself for reeling that one off. Yeah, he was starting right guard. He's out. He's on IR. So the Lions have some injuries along the offensive line. Even if Frank Ragnow plays the center, I mean, they still are going to be without their top two right guards, and Ragnow is banged up. So, yeah, I mean, the Eagles definitely have the health advantage. We'll talk about the talent advantage later on, but the Eagles are definitely healthier than the Lions going into the season opener.
Certainly, as we mentioned, the entire active roster was healthy leading into game day. EJ, you mentioned the practice squad elevations Noah Togiai and the tight end, and I think one of our favorite players that we've gotten to learn throughout training camp, wide receiver slash kick returner slash punt returner. Remember those last two positions specifically. Wide receiver Britton Covey, the undrafted rookie out of Utah. EJ, the Eagles, they were very hush and secretive about who is going to be returning kicks for them after they traded away Jalen Rager to the Minnesota Vikings. EJ, I'll let you take this one because I know you did a wonderful feature on Britton Covey just a few weeks ago. What are your expectations for him in these heightened, presentation, I guess, of an NFL game? Obviously, Britton Covey, the heralded returner out of Utah, he led the country in return yards last season as a senior.
Yeah, so, I mean, all the Lions coaches are probably pretty busy by now. Some of them are on the field, some are in the locker room. I think it's safe to let the cat out of the bag. Britton Covey's going to return punts at least some today. We saw some Quez Watkins and some Britton Covey back there. I think Britton's probably the most sure-handed punt returner they have on the team. Even when Jalen Rager was here, I think you could make that argument, but especially now that Jalen Rager is in Minnesota, I think Britton Covey is the most reliable punt returning option they have. He's got the most experience doing it. And, in college, he had some juice. I know some people, were upset about the production he had in the preseason, wanted to see more. I think that's fair, but I also think it's important to point out these, second, third team special teams units in the preseason, the blocking isn't always where you want it to be. But, yeah, I definitely think we'll see Britton Covey in some capacity as a punt returner, maybe as a kick returner today. And, yeah, he's got a track record of making plays in college at least. So maybe there's a transition. Maybe it's the ground running today. But no matter what, I do think we'll see him.
One thing that I learned about Britton Covey throughout training camp and the preseason, you mentioned not many opportunities, but when he did field the ball on returns, EJ, one thing that stuck out to me is he's a north to south runner. He manages to get yards when it seems like nothing's there. Somewhat of a contrast from Jalen Rager, who would kind of develop the reputation of running east to west, trying to make things happen. We will see if Britton Covey is back there and what he can do from the returner position. EJ,
one last note on Covey
section.
really quick. I want one last note on Covey. They do this drill where you throw the ball, you have a ball in your hand, the punt goes up. You throw the ball you're holding up in the air, catch the punt, and then it's almost like juggling. You have to catch the other one. And all these guys, we watch NFL players practice all the time. They do a lot of amazing things, but a lot of these guys struggle with that drill. Covey makes it look easy. So I really do want to stress, maybe I'll jinx him. Maybe I'll struggle with fielding punts today, but he definitely is easily the most sure-handed guy. So
I actually see him on the field right now out there with the special teams unit. Again, we are here at Ford Field in Detroit getting ready for Week 1, Game Day Central. EJ, let's transition to our next segment, our favorite segment. It is called What You Said. A reminder to everyone back home, you can submit your comments and questions at www.inquirer.com/Eagles Game Day. If you submit a question or comment, we'll have a chance to read it during our next show. EJ, let's start from Philly News 11, who asked, the Eagles pass rush should get off to an early start. I'm expecting 5+ sacks. Is that realistic? EJ, last year in Detroit, October 31, it was a Halloween game. Josh Sweat had 2 sacks against this team. I believe the defense overall had 6 or 7 sacks against Jared Goff. EJ, you kind of alluded to earlier, but these Lions are missing 2 starting offensive linemen. Frank Ragnow, the veteran center, is banged up. What's your expectations for a defensive unit that's looking to create more pressure? They finished last year, Jonathan Gannon's unit, second to last in sacks. Will that number change here as we get started with Week 1?
Yeah, I could see them having a good day today. 5 sacks is a lot of sacks, but I could definitely see them getting to Goff a lot. And Goff is the type of quarterback that if you can get to him, he's the type of guy that can get rattled by that pressure, can start to affect him. I do think, if you look at this Lions offensive line, it was pretty good going into the season, but injuries have already started to affect them, as I mentioned earlier. I mean, at tackle, they've got Penei Sewell at right tackle. Can't remember the left tackle right now, but they've got good tackle play. They have some good guys on the outside. It's the interior guys that I think, if the Eagles are going to have a big day, it's going to be from those interior guys. Like we mentioned, some of them are banged up, some of them are out. The Eagles have a really, really great defensive tackle rotation. Javon Hargrave, Fletcher Cox, Jordan Davis. Marlon Tuipulotu probably on early downs, Milton Williams. Those are the guys I think that can really affect the game today, by taking advantage of that interior offensive line.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited, EJ, to watch Hassan Reddick in his Eagles debut. He gets to come home, the Camden native, living out in Philly now, just across the bridge. I'm expecting a big game from Hassan. I know Josh Sweat, we pointed out, had 2 sacks last year. I would expect Hassan Reddick, if he's used as that edge rusher, which he has made known that's what he loves to do, as opposed to dropping. Weapon is as opposed to dropping back in coverage. I'm expecting a big game from Hassan Reddick. Our next comment comes from Sergeant 725, who says, this is a pretty aggressive comment here, EJ. Forget about the running game this year, unless it's Jalen Hurts carrying the ball himself. I'm guessing Sergeant wants to see Jalen pass the ball with his new weapon, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, as we mentioned at the top of the show. EJ, when it comes to the running game, Jalen Hurts, obviously a very dynamic reason why the Eagles finished last year as the top team in the NFL in yards per carry, rushing yards over the season. EJ, but we can't forget the trio of running backs, definitely with one to prove, Miles Sanders, the starter, joined by Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott. EJ, I know Jalen Hurts is going to play a lot in regards to the RPO and the option and, tucking the ball away in certain situations when he wants or, sees a lane or, sees a place to make a play. But we can't forget about those 3 guys there because, Boston Scott, Kenny Gainwell, they led the team in touchdowns last year. And obviously Miles Sanders, when he has been healthy, is one of the more explosive running backs in the NFL.
Yeah, I am really curious to see how much they incorporate designed runs, compared to RPOs or zone reads today. This is a big game and a big season for Miles Sanders, as our colleague Jeff McClain wrote about this week. Going into a contract year, trying to kind of prove that he is the guy that people expect him to be, and he hasn't necessarily taken that step yet. And I think is he going to do it this year? He obviously put in an offseason full of work to do so. But I think my biggest question going into this game is what's the Eagles offense going to look like? It's easy to say, and it probably has some validity to it. They didn't pay A.J. Brown $100 million to run the ball 40 times a game. The way that they played at the second half of last season, especially we're looking out at Ford Field, where for the first time last year, the Eagles truly were a run first, the full game they were run first. I think Jalen Hurts had 14 pass attempts that game. Are we going to see something like that, or are we going to see something where Jalen Hurts, maybe it's more like Atlanta, where it was 30 or 40 attempts a game? So I am really curious to see what the offense looks like. Sargent might be right. It might be 6 under center designed runs or whatever. But I do think that's one of the biggest questions going into the game is what is the 2022 Eagles offense going to look like?
We will give a little Game Day Central exclusive here, EJ. It's not that much, but earlier this morning, I did run into running back coach Jamal Singleton. We had a short conversation about the game. He alluded to Miles Sanders having a lot of, kind of weight on his shoulders. He wants to prove, he wants to earn an extension, whether that be here, whether that be getting a contract in free agency. He's in the last year of his rookie deal. But like what you mentioned, we saw a lot of tempo, a lot of pushing the ball throughout training camp, a lot of passes to number 6 and number 11, Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. You cannot forget about Dallas Goedert down the middle and what he'll do in the passing game. I think I might agree with you that might be the biggest question mark. Obviously, there's a lot of questions about the secondary, Jonathan Gannon, how he'll respond with these new weapons across the defense. But the passing offense, Mr. $100 million, A.J. Brown, he's got to expect to get the ball some, you would imagine. EJ, let's go to one more comment here from our favorite section, What You Said. And it's actually a prediction. It comes from AFHG in the Game Day Central chat, who is saying, I feel good about this one. He's guessing a score prediction, 24-6. I think we get a chance at a shutout is his question. EJ, as we've kind of watched over the past couple days, past few weeks, a lot of weird stuff happens in the first games of the season, whether it be college football. We saw Alabama yesterday commit so many penalties. We saw the Bills and Rams. There were so many turnovers in that game. as overmatched as this game might look on paper, you just never know in week one what to expect. There's always those first game jitters with the coaching staff, with the players. I think I gave the Lions in my prediction 3 points. I do think they score at some point, but a lot of things happen in week one. But I cannot imagine. I just cannot see the Lions defense, putting up that many points against this defense that has just so many new additions. The ones that we saw exceed in camp.
Yeah, well, first off, as a recovering University of Texas fan, thanks again for reminding me about that late game loss. But no, I agree with you. I mean, it's hard to predict shutouts in the NFL. They're pretty rare these days, and if the Eagles give up 10 points but score 30 points, people are still going to feel really good about it. I almost would never predict a shutout. So yeah, I'm with you.
Yes, they obviously last year, as Nick Sirianni wants to say, was last year. Here they go ahead and focused on the beginning of the 2022 regular season. EJ, let's move on to our tweet of the week. I mean, we're talking about predictions. We're kind of talking about, could they shut out? Here's a stat that Eagles fans might like. What is this week's tweet, EJ?
Yeah, it's from Eagles PR, John Ganode. The Eagles have the most season opening victories since 2011. They're 9-2 in that stretch. The next best teams are a four-way tie between the Broncos, Chiefs, Patriots, and 49ers, who all went 8-3. So yeah, I mean, obviously a little bit of that is like it's funny because it's like different coaches. It's not like it's all one coach. Like with the Patriots, you could easily go like, oh, well, Bill gets his guys ready to go for week one. But I mean, still, it definitely is interesting to think about like what makes the Eagles, so well prepared in week one. Is it just schedule luck? Is it the way the training camp has gone? Something's been working. So I imagine they're hoping that it keeps working this Sunday.
Like you pointed out, 9-2 over the past 11 seasons on week one, specifically with Coach Nick Sirianni, EJ, last year. We saw, there were so many questions heading into week one last year at Atlanta. We saw a lot of success from this team against, what would be fair to call an inferior opponent against the Falcons in Nick Sirianni's first game as the head coach. Here, they not only with the Lions, but really over the next month, they've got a softer schedule to open the season. Let's go right into predictions, EJ. You know what? Before we get into score predictions, as we kind of had alluded to earlier, EJ, give me a bold prediction for the game. Whether it be a player returning something for a touchdown, maybe Brittany Covey, maybe a defensive prediction. What's a bold prediction for you?
Yeah, if I had to go bold, like saying AJ Brown's gonna have a big game is not that bold. Honestly, give me Devontae Smith with a big game. I mean, I think that he's quietly – there was a stretch during camp where I thought he was, maybe a little quieter because he had James Bradbury as a matchup. I think that Bradbury matches up really favorably with him. But he's looked really good this summer. A lot of young receivers take steps in year 2 or year 3. Obviously, he was very productive last year. I could easily see him having a big game tonight, especially with A.J. Brown taking a lot of the attention. I'm sure I've said it before, like A.J. Brown's going to be the first guy that teams have to game plan for, especially if you're looking at the receiving core. He's such a difference maker. I could see Devontae Smith sort of benefiting from being matched up against secondary cornerbacks, being matched up, just the second priority or the third priority, even if Dallas Goedert, is maybe ahead of him on some plays. So, yeah, give me Devontae Smith with a big game.
EJ, I told you about Jamal Singleton, the running backs coach earlier. Here's another Game Day Central tidbit that you're only going to get here this morning. Or actually, let's give some historical context to this. Devontae Smith last season said that before every home game, he enjoys McDonald's as his pregame meal. EJ, this morning I ran into Devontae Smith at the Starbucks line at our hotel. Gave a little head nod. He was locked in. He had his hood up. He had his headphones in. Fueled by Starbucks, here is Devontae Smith. You pick him as your bold prediction. Last year, we saw him set the rookie receiving record. Obviously, he gets A.J. Brown now on his other side. You mentioned this earlier in training camp, kind of a slower start. He did have that injury that he was dealing with, that groin, but came back and really finished on a heater the last week of camp. It felt like we were mentioning him every day throughout those joint practice sessions in Cleveland and Miami. My bold prediction, EJ, I kind of mentioned this earlier. Hassan Reddick, I expect him to, if he doesn't have sacks, I expect him to definitely affect the passing game against this banged up offensive line of the Lions. EJ, we discussed bold predictions. Give me a score prediction. What did you put in today's Philadelphia Inquirer? Are you sticking with it?
Yeah, I never remember the exact score. It's probably something like 33-14, and I'm sticking with that. I mean, the spread is like suspiciously low. Like, what do they know that we don't? It's like a 4-point spread, but I could see the Eagles winning by double digits here. I don't know if I have it like a shutout or a blowout or anything. I wouldn't go that far, but I do think that they should be able to win this game pretty handily. They just have a talent advantage at a lot of different spots. And the messaging all week has been we're not reading our own press clippings, and I think that's really one of the only things that could really trip them up here.
Yeah, EJ, we talked about kind of the expectations with what Jason Kelsey had mentioned earlier in the week. I think at the beginning of the week and really all throughout the offseason, the number of in regards to the spread was 3.5. All throughout the week, it kind of grew. I think it's up to 5.5 now. So, some people going on the Eagles. I expect them to have like a sizable difference advantage throughout this game. Multi-possession game. I think I gave the Lions a field goal in today's paper. I think I might have gave the Eagles 20, 30 points. I'm sticking with that. Just regards to matchups, Nick Sirianni, Jeff Stoutland, the offensive line coach, they talk about how much happens in the trenches as we've watched all throughout training camp. I mean, this Eagles offensive line is very, very talented. We saw them help lead the league in rushing last year. They paved the way for Jalen Hurts. EJ, I'll give you one more a kind of bold question prediction on Jalen Hurts. What are your expectations for Jalen Hurts this season here before we wrap up this show? Going into next season, it's going to be his 4th year in the league. That means he's eligible for a contract extension. If he performs well, obviously him and his camp, they're going to have those discussions with the Eagles front office. What needs to happen for him to get to that point heading into next year?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to have to take the next step as a passer. He's obviously dynamic in the run game, and he shows some good things in the pass game, but I think, the messaging all summer has been, can you clean up your mechanics a little bit so you can improve on your accuracy? Can you make quicker decisions, better decisions? I think that those are things, at least the last two, quicker decisions, seeing things fast and, making the right decisions. That's stuff that comes with just playing in the NFL longer. I think that it's reasonable to expect that he's going to improve in that area. The accuracy thing's a little bit tougher. It's like some guys can figure that out, but the long-held belief is like you are who you are as far as accuracy goes by the time you get to the league. Josh Allen kind of proved that wrong. We're starting to see even like Lamar Jackson kind of proves that wrong. So I think he's got to take some strides that are within reach for him. I don't foresee him getting worse. Like last season, I think the way that he played, I think it's you could expect him to sort of stay at that level. But in order to really make meaningful strides in the playoffs and to win like the tough games, you're going to need him to take that next step as a passer. I think that this will be the first test. I think we can't overreact to just one game. It's going to be a long season with a lot of sample size to kind of pick through. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the work that he put in this offseason has translated into the first game.
Supported by a top-tier offensive line in the NFL. They're leading the way for him. He's got weapons all around him. Dallas Goedert, the tight end. Wide receivers, Quez Watkins, we didn't even mention. Their speed threat. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and, of course, the running backs, like we mentioned. Kenny Gainwell, Boston Scott, Miles Sanders, Jalen Hurts. He's got so many weapons around him. We will see how he improves here as a passer and decision maker as the season begins here in week 1, EJ. EJ, it is time to wrap up. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to Inquire Live at Game Day Central, presented by Xfinity. Make sure to stick around on inquire.com/Eagles Game Day. You will have a chance to interact with myself, EJ Smith, Jeff McClain, and our columnist Mike Sealski, who are on here on site in Detroit. A special thanks to our producers Renee and Angelica. For EJ Smith, I am Josh Tolentino. Thank you so much for tuning in to Game Day Central. EJ, let's get after it. Happy week 1.
Happy week 1.